Hey Tally, did you know this video is sponsored by Squarespace?
Yep.
Cool, when do you think it'll be done?
Hello Internet, Taliesin here, and today we are talking the new Grimoire of the Shadowlands book from Steve Denuza and Sean Copeland, and specifically we are talking the brand new Cosmos chart that it features within its hallowed pages, because this book, I know you beautiful fantasy loving nerd with excellent taste, I know you can tell this book is awesome right away just by the cover. One look at this bad boy and you're like, oh yes please Steve, yes this is exactly the kind of thing I'll be wanting in my greasy big lore loving mitts please. Yes, this is so up my street that it might as well be sitting on the end of my bed watching me sleep. Load me up with that new sweet Shadowlands lore goodness. Spray it all over my face and hair and let me bathe in the warm, sticky lore goodness therein. Which is why it is so frustrating that at the time of writing, actually getting hold of this book has been so difficult for the majority of us. Because it has officially been released in the US, but it's out of stock everywhere. The European release has been pushed back multiple times and is currently slated to be mid-August, which is frankly no good at all, when lucky Australians and others are getting to pour through the things secretly by themselves as we speak, when they don't even have a YouTube channel, Blizz. Seriously, what's going on here, dude? This person isn't even an influencer, Blizz. Do you know who I am? But distribution woes aside, luckily many of those lucky enough to have come into possession of the Grimoire have been happy enough to share the interesting bits online, and our eternal thanks to them, so that we can get a glimpse at the most exciting new revelations and lore tidbits. And Internet, there is none juicier than the new Cosmology chart in the back, which is at best very different from, and at worst directly contradicts, the famous and infinitely discussable original Cosmology chart in Chronicle Volume 1. And this is fascinating for so many reasons, from the differences themselves to why the differences are even there, and what that means for each individual Cosmology chart, and indeed both of them together, and why maybe they're not so different at all, and how that can cast even more, for want of a better word, light onto our understanding of the Warcraft universe and its origins. So join us as we talk about all of that and get to the bottom of WoW's new cosmology as revealed in Grimoire of the Shadowlands, and present to you a mind-blowing revelation that shows that far from being a retcon, this chart actually proves that Chronicle is correct. Okay, go. So to say that the original Cosmology chart caused a stir when it appeared in Chronicle is something of an understatement, as in a Giorgio Chiellini looks somewhat Italian level understatement, because Chiellini is the most Italian looking man ever born, and the Cosmos chart redefined the Warcraft lore and speculation community's conversations for years to come. A domination that, as this video existing proves, isn't likely to end anytime soon. Now, how literally you took this chart was kind of on you, but whether you treated it as gospel or with a fairly hefty pinch of salt, you could not ignore it, and it quickly became the basis and starting point for just about everything lore related from then on in. And it's easy to see why, right? Chronicle was sold as a definitive encyclopedia of the lore of Warcraft up to that point, which means that here, for the first time, was a canon visual representation of the cosmological forces that make up the Warcraft universe and their relation to each other. So light and void are on opposite sides of the spectrum, because of course they are. Order and disorder are on opposite sides, because of course they are. Life and death are on opposite sides, because you get it. And okay, so our reality is placed very much in the center of things, which seems a little bit suspicious, kind of like when ancient astrologists would place the Earth at the center of the universe, with everything else, including the sun, orbiting us. But in the absence of any contradicting evidence, why wouldn't we take this as absolute established fact? Like I say, that is one of the main appeals of Chronicle in the first place, right? That it illuminates and explicitly canonizes things that we didn't know before, which is why the existence of a new cosmology chart in Grimoire of the Shadowlands is so interesting, but also controversial, because, you know, it's different from the canon encyclopedia, which was supposed to be telling us exactly how things are, like absolutely for reals though this time. And when this chart started doing the rounds on Twitter, the response was passionate, and the opposition to the very idea that it exists exists was vehement. A whole bunch of people felt a genuine sense of betrayal because they were told that Chronicle was canon, they were told they could trust it, they were told they could base their framing of the lore and the universe and the way it worked on it, and yet here was another chart with everything in different places, and so surely Chronicle can't be trusted in the way we were told, right? Well, first of all, if that were actually true, I would completely understand people being upset. I would sympathize with those feelings of betrayal at the undermining of Chronicle as the trustworthy source. Honestly, I'd be on their side. But I think the people saying these things are at best incurious and at worst flat out misunderstanding what they're talking about. When you see a new cosmology chart which is different from the established Chronicle chart, there are two ways you can react. The incurious side says, well, this is stupid, it just proves Chronicle is wrong and that sucks. But the other reaction is to be curious and to say, that's interesting, I thought Chronicle's chart was canon, so how does this work? And then look into it some more. And today, class, we are going to be curious little truffle pigs and we are going to sniff out the real meaning behind all of this. So first, let's look at where this chart comes from. The Shadowlands chart should really be called the broker chart because it is a broker who shows it to us, specifically the broker who is writing the Grimoire. This entire book is written explicitly from the point of view of our broker narrator, writing a report to their presumably broker superior. Already a lot more openly subjective than Chronicle, which keeps a more neutral tone throughout. And I know what you're thinking, I know, but we'll get to that. So this broker tells how they are shown a cosmology chart by a mortal Azerothian scholar, which it turns out, because they are included side by side in the Grimoire, is the cosmology chart from Chronicle, which establishes for the first time the Chronicle chart as existing in universe, and also as being something that in-game characters know about and believe in. It also establishes the possibility that the Chronicle itself is an in-universe text and not a separate out-of-universe encyclopedia. Again, we'll get to that in a moment. Our broker narrator thinks that this Chronicle chart is ridiculous in its inaccuracy, derides the mortal for believing in it, and offers up their own established version. So this chart is obviously pretty common and well known in the Shadowlands. We find torn up cosmology charts all around Korthia to hand in as relic research tokens, but I guess the first question we have to ask is, can we trust this narrator? And the short answer is no, not really. There are moments in the Grimoire where the narrator is shown to be fallible about the events they are reporting on. For example, they seem completely unaware that Odin's eye was used to create the Eye of the Jailer. There are things we know that our narrator doesn't. Theirs is not an objective or omnipotent, or it would seem particularly impartial account. But I don't want to fall into the trap of just dismissing the writer of Grimoire as an unreliable narrator. I'd like to be more curious than that. So let's assume that our narrator is correct and see what we can learn from that. Let's really look at this new cosmology chart, shall we? And first, let's look at the things that it seems to confirm from the Chronicle version, as elements that both charts share can be seen as pretty solid evidence of things that both charts have got right. And firstly, the main 6 cosmologies in both charts are the same. Life and death, light and shadow, order and disorder, present and correct in both charts. Both charts also seem to agree on the 6 elements: earth, decay, air, fire, spirit, and water. And furthermore, these elements' relationship to each other are the same in both charts. In both cases, spirit is next to fire, which is next to air, which is next to decay, which is next to earth, which is next to water, which is next to spirit. Both charts have a central section which appears to portray the same thing. Chronicle's chart calls it reality and includes the Emerald Dream and the Shadowlands as part of the whole. Broker chart uses literally exactly the same illustration as the Chronicle chart. It shows the Dream and the Shadowlands but combines them all into what they call the Great Cycle. It's just that Chronicle goes into more detail, which is actually something that you could say for the Chronicle chart in general. It has a lot of detail and specifications that the Broker chart doesn't, including the different layers of each of the major cosmological sections. Light in the Broker chart, for example, is just light, whereas the Chronicle chart has light, but then partitions that out into holy energy and the Naru. You'd have to say that the Chronicle chart seems a bit more knowledgeable, or believes itself to be a bit more knowledgeable, about what actually makes up these different cosmologies. Even, interestingly, the death section, which leads us to some of the differences between the charts. The Broker chart isn't just more simplified in its visual representations of the different cosmologies, there are also some surprising visual choices, like life being represented by imagery from Ardenweald, a part of the Shadowlands. And look, it's definitely Ardenweald, okay? There's there's the Ardenweald tree and an Ardenweald stag and a little Ardenweald goat thing. Order is represented not by Titans or the arcane, but by a symbol that matches exactly the disc mount in Tazavesh, a specifically broker and cartel symbol. And as far as I can tell, brokers aren't Titans or members of the arcane. The symbol for death is the Arbiter, but also a moon, as in a loon. All of this is very interesting to me because it shows a real subjectivity in the chart. No less than 3 of the cosmologies are visually represented by things found specifically in the Shadowlands. The Void and Burning Legion and Light have all been in the Shadowlands during various conflicts, so every single one of these cosmology images represents something that a broker has had the opportunity to see within the Shadowlands. There appears to be a real lack of experience of things outside the confines of their own reality when it comes to this chart. Then, of course, there's the most obvious difference, the most important difference, the order of the cosmologies. Unlike the elements, which are in the same order but a different position, the cosmologies in the broker chart appear to have different relationships to each other. The basic opposites remain the same. Death and life, which unsurprisingly takes center stage. Order and disorder. Light and shadow. But light is next to death, whereas on the Chronicle chart, it's next to life. Death is next to order, whereas we're used to it next to disorder. Life is next to shadow instead of light. Some of these associations are literal opposites, and that is something which has got critics of the lore especially upset. Because come on, is shadow more closely associated to life or to death? One of these charts is wrong, and if it's Chronicle, then they see that as a retcon. Now, of course, there are plenty of ways to explain this. Firstly, if one of these charts is wrong, then let's be honest, it seems more likely to be the broker version. The Grimoire writer is a more obviously biased narrator than Chronicle. The visual representations of the cosmologies in the chart are nowhere near as detailed and consist entirely of things seen in the Shadowlands, rather than, actually in the realm of life or order, as far as we know. It's perfectly feasible that the whole purpose of this chart is to show us how wrong the brokers are about the cosmology and how right the Chronicle chart is. They could both be wrong too, of course, and we are back to the same retcon problem, but there's a third option. What if I told you, Internet, that both of these charts are correct? And not just they share some of the same correct things, but that they are both entirely correct on their own terms. And not only do the two charts both portray the cosmology accurately, but that actually they are the same chart. I've been looking forward to this bit. Now, I know, those of you who are down with your lore and like to follow this stuff have been screaming at the screen and angrily leaving comments all the way through that previous section with words to the effect of, Taliesin, why do you keep talking about Chronicle being right and canon? Steve Denusa said that Chronicle was written from the point of view of the Titans. Chronicle isn't right. It's one of the reasons we're all so angry about Chronicle. And obviously, you are not wrong to bring that up, but I have left Steve Denusa's comments out on purpose for a very good reason. Just as a refresher though, here's what he actually said.
So Steve, are you saying that Taliesin was right all along?
That's what I heard too. Taliesin was right.
Are you saying that's canon?
Well,
Could you repeat that again? I don't think he heard it.
Thanks, Steve.
Oh no, sorry, that's the wrong clip. No, here's what he actually said.
the thing to remember about Chronicle that I want you to think about is that, even any history, even something that's as encyclopedic as Chronicle, is written from a certain point of view. And if you look at the history of Azeroth that was contained in there, and even what it talked about in terms of the cosmos and things like that, whose point of view would that have been from? Well, that's right, the Titans' point of view, and the people who worked for the Titans, because they ordered so much of Azeroth and what it is. But there's a lot of other perspectives.
So yes, he does say that Chronicle was written from the point of view of the Titans, and those who worked for them. And apart from this being a very non-specific set of writers, around half of all the inhabitants of the planet are descended from Titan constructs. Every single player character in the game could be described as working for the Titans, since we saved them all from Sargeras and spent an entire expansion picking up loose yellow and blue scabs to heal our own baby Titans' wounds. But I also think that the sentiment of what Steve was saying here is misunderstood somewhat. When he says that Chronicle is from the Titans' point of view, I have never taken that to mean that they literally wrote the thing, including as they did all their biases and prejudice. I've always taken it as meaning it's the history of our world, which is a Titan and was largely shaped by the Titans, and which has had mostly Titan stuff going on throughout its history. So naturally, any history of Azeroth is going to be very Titan-centric, just because they have been the most influential force on our history, with the Void as a distant second. So our history is not so much told by the Titans as experienced through the Titans. That's what I think, but the good news is I'm not here to convince you of my views on this, because actually it doesn't matter if you completely disagree. The whole reason I never mentioned Steve Denuse's quote before is because it simply isn't important in deciding which of these charts may be the most accurate or not, because like I say, they both are. Steve is unquestionably right about one thing though: point of view is important.
Hi guys! So as I'm sure you've seen by now, we have a website, an actual website with pages, links, embedded videos, and all kinds of HTML magic beyond my comprehension. We are really happy to be working with Squarespace, who are sponsoring today's video and who have made all of this website magic possible. One of the things about having a Squarespace website is that it's just so easy to update. So we've been thinking about what we can do next, how we can make it bigger and better, and we thought, who on the internet could provide some thoughtful, balanced, and completely rational advice on our next steps? Who else but the forums? No, I'm joking. I'm only half joking. I'm talking about you. We are putting our next website feature to a vote. Just head to our website where you will find a poll on the front page and where you can vote for what you want to see next. Would you like our entire homepage replaced with Ian Hazacostas saying Taliesin was right is canon? Easy, because Squarespace makes embedding videos and changing pages a breeze. Want access to exclusive one-off merch? Simple, especially with Squarespace's amazing e-commerce platform. Or would you prefer the chance to sign up to an exclusive mailing list that sends you one picture of Idris Elba every day? That is also something Squarespace can make possible, and which Tally is weirdly insistent on. Head to our website and vote. In the meantime, why not make your own? For a free trial and 10% off your first purchase, just go to squarespace.com/Taliesin Evitel or click the link in the description to sign up. That's squarespace.com/Taliesin Evitel.
How's the poll going?
I literally just announced it.
Is the Idris mailing list winning?
I'll keep you posted.
Okay. Because on the face of it, these two charts show the cosmologies in irrevocably different relationships to each other, and they can't both be right? Wrong. Not only are these both the same chart, but they also show the same relationships between the cosmologies. Imagine two buildings built next to each other, and one person looking at them from the east and one from the west. Person A thinks that the red building is in front of the blue building. Person B thinks that the blue building is in front of the red building. They are both seeing the same buildings in exactly the same spots. They are both describing the exact same structures in the exact same spatial relation to each other, just from different angles. You see, the problem with these charts is, internet, they're printed on paper, and the thing about the cosmos is it exists in more than 2 dimensions. So what I did, right, I went into a 3D generator and I recreated the broker chart in 2D, length and width. Then I added height to the mix, allowing the different cosmologies to exist in an actual 3D space rather than a flat image. And after a little bit of tinkering and playing around, something pretty wonderful happened. And I want to be very clear, these spheres representing the cosmologies are fixed points. They do not travel at all. The only thing that moves here is the camera. But you see, the thing is, that death chart, it shows the cosmologies in the exact same fixed points as the Chronicle charts. We are just using a different camera angle to view them. So just to make this super clear, these are the same chart. They show the same cosmologies in the same positions and relations to each other. The only thing different is the direction that we are looking from. The broker chart is right, and more importantly, the Chronicle one is also right. There are no caveats, no excuses, no tricks. They are both showing the same thing, just limited by their 2D presentation. Does that blow your mind? Because it blows my mind. In fact, here is actual footage of me the moment I made these line up properly. Oh yes. Oh, yes. Oh, yeah! Eat my shit and hair! I was very happy, but I want to make this clear. This only took me an hour with a program that I had never used before. This was easy to do. Easy to the extent that I am in no doubt at all that this is entirely intended by the narrative team. And if you still don't believe that, well, there is one last detail I haven't told you about this change of perspective. The anchor point that I'm using for the change of camera angle is the center. Reality on the Chronicle chart, the Great Cycle on Grimoire. And the two different viewpoints are from literally the opposite sides of this central reality. It's just too perfect a symmetry for it to be just a happy accident on Blizzard's part, in my opinion. And obviously this is really cool. Like, it's awesome, yes, but I think it could teach us something about how we as fans and lore nerds approach the lore of this game. Because it is the easiest thing in the world to see some new lore and assume that because it doesn't seem to match up with what's come before, that it's a retcon or that the writers just don't care. But the problem with that approach is that you lose the curiosity to work out what's actually going on. People who dismiss the Broker chart as being a retcon of the Chronicle chart were never going to find this really awesome explanation because they were too busy talking about what an annoying retcon it was, or how Chronicle is cheapened because it is not the definitive version anymore. Those people, this time, were wrong. And if we learn anything from this, then I think it should be that...
Taliesin was right.
Are you saying that's canon?
Well,
No, not even that. It's to be more ready upon encountering new lore that doesn't seem to line up with what came before it, to just take a moment and make our reaction less, that doesn't fit, and maybe a bit more, how does that fit? And there we have it, conclusive proof that the Chronicle chart and the Broker chart do not contradict each other even slightly in the cosmological forces they show or their relationship to each other. Like I say, this took me an hour. I'm pretty sure if I spent the afternoon plotting the elements in there, it's really hard because there'd be a different size, I'd have to make a new base model and everything, that it would be pretty straightforward to have them line up perfectly in the exact same way. I laughed out loud when I discovered this, and it's been an absolute joy sharing it with you. I'm still really interested with how much more basic the Broker chart is, because in my opinion, it appears to back up another little pet theory that I have, that the Shadowlands isn't actually physically a part of the Death Realm, but actually exists in our reality. Reality, or the Great Cycle. That's a discussion for another day, I think. So for now, what are your opinions on this video? Do you agree with me about the two charts? Or am I talking out of my Great Cycle? Is there something else going on? What is the Broker's connection with the Realm of Order, if any? What has a loon got to do with death? And is there anything that contradicts the Chronicle chart after all that I may have missed? Let us know in the comments below. And thanks for joining us today. If you liked this video, don't thank us, thank our patrons who give their actual real life money to make all of our work happen. And seriously, thank you. This channel could not exist without you. If you didn't like it, eat my shit and hair.